it's hard to replicate my self-control aspect, especially if you have some perfectionistic traits.
So I recognize that in myself that I need that. And I want to build that for myself, right, in order to be successful. So, because I knew at this time in my Airbnb career, I'm hosting my house that I live in. And what I'm realizing is that I want to do more.
Right now, I am in Germany. I'm in Frankfurt. So this is where I'm from. This is my home.
Okay.
And yeah, like we focus on the business. So like building out all my companies, heavily hiring new employees, testing out new strategies, testing out the new employees,
Yeah.
seeing often that things don't work and just needing to be really strict and also really precise in what I expect, but at the same time trying to let go because like this is actually the cause why I have the employee. So it's hard to replicate myself. So this is like this the control aspect, especially if you have some perfectionistic traits.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. It's that's probably like one of the biggest challenges that any, I think, entrepreneur goes through in the beginning is trusting other people to do the work that you've probably already been doing yourself, right? It is kind of it's the struggle starts with you internally, and then the struggle starts with other people. Right? You're trying to get them to do what you do the same way that you believe that you do it, right? So that's a process.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's worth it because it's just the adaptation of learning in a problem-solving way. And my goal is also to constantly challenge my employees so they become more independent. So in a way, I really like to throw them into the water and I like to have them make the mistakes so then that they have to deal with the mistakes by themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's like we say sink or swim, right? You just
Yeah,
throw them
yeah.
there, and it's really funny too because you'll see, depending on who you're working with, whether or not they're the person that can do that, right? That can survive and thrive in that kind of scenario. Because I use a lot of VAs in my business now, and thank God because they help me a lot. But some of them, if you approach them and you want them to be more proactive or to come with you with solutions, you'll find out that some of them are not built that way. It's a very transactional relationship, right? So you as a business owner have to figure out where that person, if you still want them, right? If they still add value, where they fit in the business. You can't force it, right? You have to put people in the most successful roles. So as a leader, that's kind of your job and your role, your responsibility really to find that in people and then place them appropriately.
Yeah, and I realize it's amazing that we finally are talking because we've been cooperating for a while. But just to what you've said, so basically the experience I've made, what I heard on other podcasts, entrepreneurial advisor boards and books and so on, is basically to get the A team. Just a lot of people won't make it. And I very much go with the Gary Vee strategy. And that is that I hire actually really fast. I like to give people a chance if I see some potential. And often it's not so much only about the qualifications, but about the mindset. If a person is actually um, motivated and willing to solve the task and obstacles to get thrown in their way.
Yeah.
And then if they don't perform well, I have to let them go. But if they perform well, I raise their salary in no time. They get promoted, they get into a better position, they get more responsibility, and I tell them, hey, if you keep on over exceeding, I'll raise your salary again because this person will just provide more value for my company. So it's totally worth it. So this is how I build and yeah, like a happy and comfortable environment, but everyone also strives to be better.
That's a beautiful thing, man. I try to foster the same thing in my environment. I'm a team player. I've always been a team player. That's what motivates me. I love working with people, good people, right, who want to come to work. That gives me a tremendous amount of energy. So I thrive in those types of environments, and I try to cultivate the same in my own team. I think in my previous role, when I started this work, being an entrepreneur all in, right? I didn't have a lot of that. I didn't really have an environment where I felt like it was a team kind of spirit. So I recognized that in myself that I need that and I want to build that for myself, right, in order to be successful. So if someone can't fit or conform to that, then I know pretty quickly whether or not they're going to be successful on our team. So yeah, I totally resonate with that, man. It's good.
It's a Californian entrepreneurial spirit. Would you say that?
And yeah, it must be. I'm a Cali kid for life. I romanticize the idea about going somewhere else, but I'm gonna yeah. It's so I'm California through and through for sure. So so be it.
So our cooperation that has been the Airbnb referral system, and you're all in into Airbnb. I think the easiest way is to be more accurate if you present your service real quick, and then later on, I would also like to touch base on the other venture got in recently, which has nothing to do with Airbnb. But yeah, let's stay with Airbnb first.
Yeah. So you want to hear about my journey of how I got into this crazy environment? Yeah, so I've been doing this for about 7 years. Airbnb started off as a side hustle. I'm a traveler. I love traveling, seeing new countries. So I always used Airbnbs when I went to travel. And then, I come home and, I finally bought a house here in California. This is back in 2016. And I still wanted to travel and I was still traveling. I was rarely ever home. So I still had to pay a mortgage. I had to purchase the house. So I'm like, how can I earn extra money, right, for a house that I'm not really utilizing? But I still want to live here. So then I thought, oh, Airbnb, right? I use Airbnbs, why not become a host? So I became a host as a side hustle and I immediately fell in love with it. And I would say, I always tell people when they ask me, like, how did you learn how to do this? And how did you overcome your anxiety? I had all the fears, I had all the anxiety. I was a person who was relentlessly pursuing information. So I would go on YouTube, I would follow the big, the gurus on YouTube offering the coaching courses. I wouldn't pay for it, but I consumed everything that was free knowledge. And I implemented a lot of what I learned, a lot of what I researched into,
Danke.
hey mom, I started just incorporating all that information into my own business. That's how I basically taught myself. So it was so funny because in this environment, I absolutely hated my job. I was really good at leadership, right? I had a corporate job. I worked for the state of California. I was really good at teaching people how to do their jobs, building processes, right? I was a data analyst. I consumed and ran data all day long, but it was boring to me. Airbnb was fun. So everything I learned, process system wise, I was putting into my side hustle. And eventually it became my main hustle. I was able to detach from that horrible, horrible corporate job, but I was able to build this small baby, right? My Airbnb business over time just through learning and implementing what I learned. So fast
Mhm.
forward now, we have a pretty wide portfolio consisting of single family homes. It's over 40 properties that we host right now, including a boutique hotel that we just opened up 4 months ago. So this is it's technically like a dream job for me. I have a great team, people that I've trained over the years, people that believe in what I'm trying to do. I believe in what they want to do. So it works. And I'd never go back. I would never go back to working for someone else. I much prefer working for myself. And, this is an ecosystem that's just going to continue to grow over the years. Yes, you're going to have to do different things. Like you said earlier, you have to try different strategies. But as long as you're agile, you will be successful in this space. I believe I will continue to be successful in this space.
That's a really good description. And the first question that came to my mind is, you've been a traveler, you didn't want to commit to a place because you've been traveling constantly, or have you always had a base in California and you just went on vacation on trips often?
Yeah, great question. You know, every time I travel, I've been to 14 countries. Every time I travel, I always felt like California, even though I had an amazing time wherever I was, California was always home. I just have
Mm.
that when I got back to California, when I got back to
Uh,
my little. So I would say,
Actually, I felt it as well when I've been to California. I've been there around Burning Man 2017 for the first
ah,
time, and then I spent another month in California with the surfboard and a buddy in a van, and yeah, I felt really at home, even though it was my first time. And I never felt that about any other place in the world. So it's funny that you're saying that.
yeah, man, you're living the true California lifestyle. You got the van, the surfing, you get it. Yeah. So yeah, California has been my base, and it's always kind of felt that way. So that's how my journey started. I was always travel somewhere. I love traveling. I love seeing new countries, meeting new people. I think that's a big issue right now with people who live in the States is that they don't travel enough, right? We don't get outside of our bubble, but that's another conversation. So yeah, I would always go other places just to experience different experiences. And I said, why can't I offer this to someone else who's coming to California for the first time in my own home, and also like make extra money, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about that money.
Interesting. For me, it has been really different because I like to be around. I like to, even nowadays, live at one place for a few months, maybe explore business opportunities there, build a team there, especially with Airbnb, it works really well. You can explore the market, you can find properties, and you can actually find reliant people. But you definitely run some risk because you don't have the control element, what we spoke about before. So I had really good experiences with that and had, yeah, actually really bad experiences with that, especially over the quarantine when there was no easy access to some countries. So I had those experiences in Thailand. After all, I profited a lot. So in a way, I always saw it as a lifestyle business. This was something I do on the side, running my business while I'm living at a place and at the same time renovating, designing a place just to also have some variation in the work I do. You know, most of the time it's just on the phone, on the laptop, it's mental work, and then actually having physical work as a balance in a way to have a meditative process. But you obviously made the decision also because you like California as a base to just set up your business at one location. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. Future state, I believe that I said this word before at being agile. I believe every business owner, especially in this space, you have to have a certain degree of agility. And what I mean by that is you have to be able to make changes, right? So I believe that in the future state of my business, we will be in other places, right? I will have different bases. But for now, I'm comfortable with California. But I believe in the sustainability of my business. I will have to diversify geographically, as
Mhm.
many other owners or operators in the space will have to do in the future to stay relevant.
And did it feel like a sacrifice for you?
No, I believe that I made sacrifices, a lot of sacrifices in my life. This is not one of them. Yeah, a sacrifice to me would have been staying in my former job where I was not happy and just giving time for money. That was a sacrifice I did for many years that I believe that I would never do again. And so anything that I do now for myself or for my business, whether or not I'm comfortable doing it, I don't see it as a sacrifice. I see it as
Mhm.
an opportunity.
It's amazing that you say that because I'm sure a lot of people which will listen to this can relate to what you've said.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people that come to me, it's kind of surreal to see where they are sometimes because I was there as well. Just afraid to take action, feeling stuck, right? Feeling like this is it. I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not happy, but maybe I'm not as sad as my neighbor, so I'm okay. That mentality just on this side of where I'm at, it's just kind of it's kind of surreal to see that because they do have so much opportunity. Everyone has so much opportunity if they will just believe in themselves, right? And also take action towards making change. So that's a mental flip and a challenge that a lot of people encounter. It's kind of tough to get over.
You're making Tony Robbins some competition right now.
I'm always speaking from the heart and from going through it, right? We all have our challenges that we go through. And I think that if us, being on the entrepreneurial side, with so many people that see this as a foreign dream that's not attainable, I feel like we do have a responsibility to share our story, to inspire other people to make changes and help them realize that they can. Yeah. So these kind of discussions I think are important and we should share them more.
I couldn't agree more. And the best thing I got from being an entrepreneur were actually the challenges. The challenges made me to the practically carefree person I am today. I told you before we started the recording, hey man, I'm so busy. And you're like, yeah, man, I'm so busy. But like we say that with a smile, even though it can be stressful. But this is like pretty similar to what people describe in mangas. So they're really inspiring. And there you have all those characters and they're the same, like they're carefree and they're like super jacked and everything, and they say things like, yeah, like I want you to live an easy life, so that's why I had to go through all those challenges. And it's so true. And yeah, like I would say if challenges arises, I rather welcome the challenge, because if perceive it as a challenge, then I know there's something I can learn. So I welcome it as a teacher.
Oh, this is so true with every single experience you have in the human experience. I believe wholeheartedly that challenges make us stronger, better, and just believe in ourselves more. It's healthy. It's healthy to challenge yourself. Yeah, chill. It totally makes sense.
So let's dive into your company structure a little bit more. So you said that you actually own property as well, that you had a mortgage. So there are different aspects of doing Airbnb. So what's really common and really low entrance barrier is, of course, arbitrage.
Mhm.
Renting a place, subletting the place, making more money. Landlord might get a little bit more rent. Really simple.
Yep.
So there's a risk involved. Best is owning property in my mind, at least definitely for the long term, but it's harder to access.
Yep.
And independent of those two, there's the management that you actually earn with the property of other people. They don't have the expertise. They don't want to put the time in, and you could take care of everything from the cleaning to the communication with the guests and so on, or only for certain aspects. And in your case, you really went into the design direction, because actually you're not only an entrepreneur, you're an artist. So tell us a little bit more about this journey.
Yeah, so thank you for acknowledging that. Yes, I'm an artist. I'm a painter. I love art through and through, and I've just been a creative person my whole life. So I've kind of just taken that component of what I love, something that is a hobby that is part of me, and tried relentlessly to incorporate it into my business. So we actually practice those three models that you communicated. We do co-hosting, right? So we'll manage other properties that people just don't want to manage themselves. We will do arbitrage, so we'll lease properties and then furnish them and then re-rent them on platforms like Airbnb. And then there's properties that I also own or we funnel through our LLC. So I think, I mentioned a little while ago about the importance of staying competitive in this ecosystem. And that's definitely going to be one of the reasons that you can stay competitive is to diversify yourself like that. So our portfolio is diverse in that nature. And we have, like I said, about 40 different doors that we host. Now, the art component is something that I started really early on because I recognized that as something that I didn't see in the ecosystem when I started back in 2016. and something that I wanted to incorporate into the ecosystem. Let me tell you a little story about how it happened. So when I first started hosting the house that I purchased back in 2016, this is the only Airbnb I had when I started, obviously. I furnished it like it was going to be my forever home. And what I mean by that is as an artist, I decorated all the walls with all my paintings, right? I would come home from work and I would paint because it was a way for me to disconnect all the chaos and things that I hated about my day-to-day job and free my mind, right? So if you walk into my house back in 2016, even now, you will just see paintings everywhere. And so when I opened up my home on Airbnb, I recognized that it looked a little different than what the run of the mill Airbnbs out there look like. And I was okay with that because I wanted to elicit kind of a reaction and kind of see what the market would do with that. So I let people into my studio basically, and they absolutely loved it. Not only did they love it, but people wanted to take pieces of my home, my artwork with them. And so that's when I discovered people wanted to do that, that's when I had an aha moment. And I said, oh, this is not just a hobby, this is actually a business, right? And as going back into my, maybe my teenage years, I always wanted to be an artist. I always wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be a successful person who just was able to create what he wanted and then be able to sustain his lifestyle by doing that. And I believe that I probably romanticized it a lot because it was something that I really wanted. But I quickly realized that the path of an artist is very challenging. It is one that is very consuming, but also not very lucrative, right? And it was challenging for me to align myself with that path, understanding that I really wasn't going to be making a lot of money and I didn't necessarily know how comfortable I was going to be able to live. So fast forward to that moment when I discovered that people not only wanted to stay in my place, but they also wanted to take pieces of my art home with them. I realized that there was a connection there for a pretty cool business. One that satisfied my passion, right? My passion for creating and being an artist, but also one that would supply me with a lifestyle that I could be comfortable with. So I basically combined those two things into the business that I have today. So what I do specifically is all the homes that we have that we host, manage, or that I own, they all contain artwork from myself, of course, but also six other artists that I've partnered with here stateside in California to show and sell their artwork in the homes. So if you didn't know, one of the biggest challenges in being an artist when you're first, especially when you're first starting, is getting your work out there, right? Getting it in galleries, getting people exposed to it, making sales, right? You need eyeballs on paintings to be able to move your artwork. So this business is essentially a vehicle for artists, especially new ones, to be able to get their artwork out to real people, real consumers, potential customers, right? To market their artwork in a different. That's how my business was born, and that's something that I've kept through and through, consistent over the years of growth and scaling, and I will continue to do so. And it's positioned us to be just in better positions for funding, right? We've gotten public grants for it because we are in the art space, we are in the creative space, we are helping other entrepreneurs, other people in the art space succeed. So it's just been a win-win for myself as a business owner, as an artist, and then also other artists.
What you said about romanticizing your vision, I think that's really helpful. And I see it in a way the same with spirituality. So that you have that amber and you always keep it lit. So there's always just a little spark needed and it's fired up again.
Yeah,
And for me, that's definitely feedback of my employees, of my partners, of the people I provide service to, of the guests of my Airbnb. And in your case, I can imagine it being so much with the artists you partner up with, because artists, talented people, brilliant minds, but often the marketing aspect is missing. And you give them that space.
exactly. Yeah. And I love that analogy. I love that what you say about the ember constantly burning because It doesn't go away. And yeah, I tried to suppress it when I was younger because no, I didn't believe in it. But it's always there. It's always there.
Yeah. And to go back to what we said before, there will be hard and overly challenging moments. And those are the moments where you remind yourself of that picture. You get back into those old patterns, those old feelings, and remind yourself why you're even doing that in the first place. And I mean, like the money is great, but both of us are at a point where we don't have much limitations in our lives. So like I personally don't need to private jets and yachts. Like of course you can have those experiences once in a while, and that's possible and that's cool. But you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
after all, then it's just about the day-to-day hustle, and that you get your satisfaction out of what you're doing and out of how you serve your surroundings, or in a bigger picture, you could say how you serve humanity.
I totally resonate with that. Yeah, I totally align myself with that. It is, I have a funny story about challenges. My one of my younger sisters, she unfortunately got in a vehicle accident and she totaled her car. And I'm in a position, right, a little bit more freer. I said, hey, I want to help you out. I have a vehicle that you could use. And I think, you don't have another one or access to another vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and help you out. The only thing is, she's used to driving an automatic, which, is basically very easy and simple to drive. The vehicle that I had is a manual, it's a stick shift. So she once she realized that, she was like, well, I'm not sure if I can, if I can do it. I'm not sure if I can learn it. And she's telling me like, I'm scared. I don't know. The more she's telling me that she doesn't want to do it or that she's scared, the more I want her to drive the vehicle, right? The more I want her to just take this opportunity that I'm giving her, right? To have a vehicle, have a way to get around, but also to learn a new life skill. So it's just funny to be on this side of challenges of a person that who just consumes challenges and then speak to a person who's constantly in that fear and kind of already see that person on the other side of that challenge and knowing how good they're going to feel about themselves and how much of a better position they're going to be in. It's just it's really, it feels good to be on this side of things and to want to help people push through that because they're going to be better on the other side and they're going to feel so good. They're going to feel so good.
And that's the experience you made with the artists you're cooperating with.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that was one of the hardest things that myself as an artist when I was first starting out had to try and navigate is, well, geez, how do I get my name out there? Like, how do I get into an art gallery? How do I make money doing this? Right. So I recognize that, not only are we business owners, but we're also problem solvers, right? I tell my team that all the time. We're professional problem solvers. That's what we do. So I see that I approach every artist that I'm starting a relationship with is, hey, let me help you solve one of the problems that I know you're going through. It is the marketing, it is getting exposure, it is making sales. So let me tell you about this opportunity that I have where you can overcome that. We can overcome it together. So, and all of my relationships with my artists, they are all great. I love working with them, and I think I'm excited to work with more because I know that, especially in this ecosystem, the art world is super competitive, right? There are tons of artists out there, so you have to be agile, you have to be diverse, and a little bit strategic in how you market yourself. You have to use different mediums, different platforms that you wouldn't otherwise know of, or even know you needed to leverage. So I'm glad that
Mhm.
I'm able to kind of bring that as an opportunity to them.
I love that. I think it's all about the design. People forget that we're both really visually aesthetic inspired people. So I think it comes natural to us. My experience has been with renovating and furnishing my Airbnbs that I had designs from overseas in my
Mm.
properties. For example, in Thailand, I have a property with Georgian Middle Eastern design. A lot of not only furniture, but mostly decoration and art from local artists in Georgia, and a lot of secondhand and vintage, which in itself is such a pleasure to purchase because you kind of go for a scavenge hunt of the perfect thing for your apartment. So it's so much fun. And a lot of those experiences I made with my former partner back then. So it was really organic to travel, to go to different places, and then explore the city and shop some nice things that will come into the next Airbnb somewhere on the other side of the world. What I want to speak to, which is less familiar to most people, now we spoke about the arbitrage opportunity, and obviously the entrance barrier there is really small. So this is why I said, like in the beginning, I worked a lot with secondhand and vintage. It has better quality, but on the other hand, it's just cheap. So it makes sense. So everyone can get into this business. But what's more interesting for the long term is the investors for the Airbnb business and the management aspect. And I would like to speak about both a little bit. I think it's easier if we start with the management aspect. And I would like to know how you build your brand because this is the hardest thing ever to get on the radar and have the trust of the landlord itself to say, here's my property. I trust this young man to actually make something nice out of it and generate more money that I can actually do myself. So,
Yeah,
how did you go about that?
for sure. Give me one moment. This is going to be your okay, camera back on.
All good? All
Um,
right.
yeah, so how did I start? Man, I'm like mentally taking myself back to my living room with my laptop. It's after work and I'm tired from the workday, but I'm so excited about learning Airbnb. So I'm on my YouTube and I'm looking at these guys, these videos from what's his name, Sean Rockevich, and this guy Kyle Stanley, all these big people who are like making tons of YouTube videos about this arbitrage thing, right? This is back in 2016. And I'm like, oh my God, how are these guys like coming up with what to say? And I finally like got enough information where I was able to kind of write a script. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to these people, I'm gonna look at the houses, right? And I'm going to say that I'm going to, I'm a business owner and I want to like this whole time I'm like taking bits and pieces of information that I'm learning from people in my research and assembling this script, right? This thing that I'm going to tell these property owners because I knew at this time in my Airbnb career, I'm hosting my house that I live in. And what I'm realizing is that I want to do more, right? And I want to do more as quickly as possible. And in my initial research, I remember being just confused. I'm like, how do these guys have 10 doors already? How do they have 20 doors? How are they affording to buy all these properties and amass this these incredible Airbnb businesses? Where are they getting all this money? And then that's kind of where I learned about the arbitrage concept. So fast forward now, I'm back on my couch, and so I'm googling like, how do you run an arbitrage? Like, what are the steps that you take? And I'm assembling these scripts, right? And so finally, I get to a place after several sessions in the mirror, right, where I'm talking to myself and role playing and practicing. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go find a house and I'm gonna go start talking to these people about getting arbitrage deal. So I remember the first pitch that I did, it wasn't over the phone. I always went to the properties and went to go look at them. I was really nervous. And I actually had printed out like a little 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that kind of detailed what I wanted to do, right? Who I was, what I wanted to do, and kind of just a brief one-page education on what arbitrage was and what I leveraged my experience of already being a host, right? To be able to communicate to these people and convince them, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to take care of your property and let me do it. So I remember, gosh, it must have been my first or second conversation with the owner. I had this little stupid piece of paper, but what I was able to do was just speak really confidently about what I wanted to do with this property. And I believe that my practice, my due diligence to make sure that I knew what I wanted to do and I was relentlessly trying to perfect it, right? I was just trying to get to a place where I was comfortable saying what I needed to say. I had achieved that. So my confidence in communicating what I was trying to do to that property owner convinced him to let me do the arbitrage on his place. That was what it was. It was the confidence in how I was delivering the messaging. I believe that it was the most important factor that landed me my first arbitrage deal. And from then on, after I had approached that challenge, right, and come on the other side of it, come through that fear and anxiety, then I was like, I'm unstoppable. Like I was so excited, and I fed off of that excitement for years. Just that that little amber that you were talking about. Like I had a new one, and it was for hosting and for this weird Airbnb business. So I leveraged that confidence to kind of grow and expand from there. I remember the first co-hosting deal that I got. It was actually from my electrician. He actually, my home is 1930s home, so it's got a shit ton of problems. So he was always there fixing a plug or changing an outlet or rewiring something. And he recognized that I was doing hosting. And so he was very inquisitive about it. He was like, so you don't stay here when people come? I'm like, no. Like they have the whole house. He was like, oh. He's like, and they don't steal anything. And he's like asking all these questions like each time he would come. And I'm just communicating to him confidently, right? Like, no, bro, this is good. It's so fun. So well, I remember the next time he came, he was like, he's like, hey, I have this house on X Street. And it's like 3 blocks over. He was like, I think I would like to try this Airbnb thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he was like, yeah, I just don't have a lot of time. He was like, can you like do it for me? And I was like, oh, yes, I can do that for you. So the funniest thing is I didn't even know about co-hosting. I didn't know it was a thing. I had only really learned, the first thing I learned about was arbitrage, and I honed in on that relentlessly to learn it. I didn't know that there was another thing called co-hosting, and he was the person that introduced to me that concept. And so I said yes before even knowing how to do it. And then I just set me on another path to learn about what co-hosting was. And I was like, oh, this is it. I'm unstoppable. I got ownership, I have arbitrage, and I have co-hosting. I can't wait to leave my corporate job. So that's kind of how it took off. It was very organic in the beginning. It was a very organic experience. And I didn't have a lot of materials. I didn't have a fancy website. Again, this is like 2016, 2017. So Airbnb is not this huge conglomerate that it is now. But I had confidence and some information about what to say and what to do. And most importantly, I took action. I didn't just sit at home every night and look at the videos and write down scripts and then just leave it at that. I went out into the world and applied what I learned. That's how it happened.
Really good story. Really relatable and organic story. Reminds me of experiences I made myself. I myself have never gotten into management or co-hosting, how you described it. So I would be curious how your deals are, because in comparison to arbitrage, where you basically take over the property, that you in arbitrage you rent a place and then you essentially sublet it. But you sublet it on short-term rental. And then, for example, over a platform like Airbnb, that's why it's more profitable. But speak a little bit more about the business side, about your management conditions. And if you like, you can also keep on going with your storyline, how that was in the beginning and how it evolved to what it is now.
Yeah, so the business side, gosh, I became really good at what I knew, right? But there's this whole world of other stuff that I just didn't know yet. So I think that was kind of how I grew and scale, as I would just do things really well that I knew and understood, right? And then I would learn about something new and try to apply or implement it into my business, right? So I'm very much a person that I will try and perfect something myself or do it the best that I can do myself before I will train or offboard to someone else. And that in itself was really hard for me to do, to trust another person to do the work that I believe that I did the best in the best manner that no one else could do like I could. As a business owner, you have to do that. You have to do that because you're only one person. So in the beginning, I did everything myself. I don't know how I did it because I was exhausted, but it was so fun. I would talk to all the guests myself. I would go and find all the properties myself. I would design and set up all the properties myself. I would do it all myself. I can't believe this is also, 7 years ago. So I think I had a little bit more youth, a lot more energy. I would I would go and make the contracts for my arbitrage deal myself. I would use websites like Law Depot or whatever kind of canned agreements that I could develop. I would use those for my co-hosting deal. The first one I ever did, I literally dove into YouTube and was like, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm protected, to make sure that the owner is protected, and to make sure that the roles and responsibilities are clear? Google, right? I would just Google everything and I would reach out to the community, right? Eventually, I started to make a networking connection with other hosts, right, in my area and other areas that were doing the same thing. So I would leverage online communities to get information. I would send direct messages to other operators that I knew had a portfolio of their own. How did you do this? What kind of agreements did you use? Oh, what do I need to think about legally? How much do you charge for this? Oh, do you charge for pet fees? Oh, I didn't know you could do that. So I would start to just learn from other people and implement this into my business. Again, a business that I was running myself. True story. I would be at work from 8 to 5 at my corporate job. I would have a turnover that day. So a turnover is when the house needs to be cleaned, right? I would clock out on my lunch. I would drive to my house, clean the entire house on my lunch break, and then I would go back to work. I did that for about 8 months. And it was crazy, but it was so fun. Then I quickly realized that I hated cleaning. And that was one of the first things that I outsourced to one of my first employees. I realized that I didn't have time to do that anymore, and it was actually exhausting. So I had to, as a business owner, trust myself to outsource that role. So
A new person you're gonna be co-hosting.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We are co-hosting this property. So this is I was like,
All
oh,
right, all right. What would be really interesting to know some of the details? How is the split for the co-hosting?
oh,
Do you have individualized deals every time? Do you have a standard deal, etc.?
yeah.
Let's get into the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, so my portfolio is split. I would say 60% is co-hosting, right? And another 20% is going to be arbitrage, and then the remaining is properties that I own.
Hmm.
And every co-hosting deal that I do there's a standard percentage, right? So we don't go below or above. We charge 20%. And then we have an agreement with each of our homeowners. The agreement is standardized. It's actually it's evolved a little bit over the years just to make it tighter based off of things that I've learned or things that I wanted to incorporate myself just to protect myself in the business more. And it clearly defines the roles and responsibilities of us as the hosting management company and them as the property owners of the property. So what they need to keep up and what we need to keep up. And the agreement is in place for every single one of our co-hosting deals. On the arbitrage side, I really lean heavy on the negotiations in the beginning to make sure that the contract is fair, both for us and for the property owner, right? Because arbitrage, you have a little bit less control and ownership. So it's really important for us to make sure that we, one, get a good rate on the rent, right? So that we can remain profitable on that property, but also to ensure that, certain things go wrong on the property, we're not held liable for them, that, maintenance issues are captured and taken care of by the landlord, just things of that, right? Things of that nature to make sure
Hmm.
it's smooth sailing as much as possible. Everything's documented and there's no surprises. And then on the ownership side, those are the most kind of the most fun for me because I don't answer to a client. I don't have to answer to the property owner. I just answer to myself, right? So I have the most control and flexibility on properties that I own. And, all of them, all the relationships are different a little bit in the nuance. Some property owners are super involved, right? They have questions or they have answers for a lot of details. Others are just very passive. They not necessarily don't have interest, but they have higher or different priorities than the relationship that we have, and I'm fine with that. So that's kind of how the distribution of the different verticals are in the business as of now. Will that change in the future? Potentially. We definitely want to lean more towards ownership. So creative financing deals are something that we are definitely continuing to look at. And I think more on the co-hosting side, just because rents right now, and especially on stateside in California, are pretty high, and it's challenging to negotiate to get a really good rate. You could get one, but you do have to do a lot of work up front to make sure that you find a good deal. So again, it is about as a business owner, where is your time the best spent? And it's always an evaluation of what's the best direction for the company.
Are
Does
you
that
talking to are you talking in regards of competition?
Competition? Yes. Yeah, there's the competition. You mean in terms of like just
The
there?
the co-hosting.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of coaches out there right now who are teaching people how to do this. During the pandemic, it was a kind of a weird time, right? So this ecosystem, the popularity of it is surged. And a lot of people, a lot of investors got excited about this space and jumped in. And that created a lot of new hosts, excuse me, a lot of new hosts, a lot of new entrepreneurs, a lot of new people offering co-hosting services. So yes, the landscape of competition has grown significantly. I believe again that you just need to be a person who understands your customer, the person that you're trying to serve, your particular guest. You have to be willing to take action. You have to be diversified in your approach, right? No longer can you just put your home on Airbnb and expect to make great returns. No, you have to leverage different platforms, different strategies to be able to maximize the revenue on those properties. So yeah, you just have to be diversified in many different aspects to stay relevant in this ecosystem of higher competition.
And you talk about the time it takes for the co-hosting itself, and that you started doing that yourself in the beginning without any employees. So let's go back to the story time. How has your journey been there from learning it all from scratch to actually educating other people to do what you can? Because essentially, I assume most of this part of your business is sourced out.
Yeah, yeah, you that's a really good point. I go back to the time where I tried to think that I could do it all myself, and I recognize how unreal of a direction that is for any business owner. I would say about 80 to 85% of the work that is done for my company is outsourced, either through people locally, which I say boots on the ground, or through virtual assistants, right? You're not going to be able, this is not a business that you can do by yourself. You're only one person. You have to be in the mindset to train out work. So, for example, when I was messaging all the guests in the beginning, that was one of the first things besides cleaning to go away. I automated a lot of that to give myself back time, right? To do other things that the business needs, right? When you're going out there and looking for properties for arbitrage or for co-hosting, largely you're the only person in the business that knows how to do that. So anytime that you're spending talking to guests or cleaning out the toilet is a non-priority. It's actually a disservice to the business. So you have to recognize those lower tasks. Not saying they're not valuable, but they are lower tasks and be able to quickly train those away from your plate so that you can focus on higher yielding revenue tasks like acquiring new contracts, right? Finding new properties, sourcing new talent for the business, right? Those are all skills that you as a business owner, those are high dollar skills that you should have as a business owner. And the lower dollar skills, you need to remove them from your plate. And you have to do that pretty early on if you want to scale as quickly as you need to be successful and relevant in this ecosystem.
And I assume the virtual assistants, those are your direct employees, and the cleaning you have whether outsourced to different companies.
Yeah, so that is a combination of things on the cleaning side. For cleaning, I do have like a cleaning manager. She's local, boots on the ground. She's actually more of my COO because she handles a lot of operations. But a large component of her responsibilities is to manage the cleaning infrastructure. A lot of the cleaners that we have, there's about seven that we have boots on the ground locally, are in-house. What I mean by that is that they only clean our properties. They don't clean anyone else's. And we find that that is more conducive for having a good environment of control and consistency. It's because we have our own standards and we run them by those standards consistently without fault. And it's easier for us to manage that way. We have in the past brought on external resources for cleaning assistance, but it's been challenging because, again, we don't control all the components of their business. So there's been hiccups here and there that we could have otherwise mitigated if we just kept it in-house. So, lessons learned. Not saying that that won't happen again in the future. We might onboard another company or whatnot, but for now, we have a good feeling about the level of control that we have. Communications largely handled through a combination of automation, either inherent in the platform. So, for example, Airbnb has their own canned responses. Smart B&B has their own ecosystem of canned or responses that you can leverage from their platform. And then also virtual assistants who will jump in and provide messaging or support by way of communication to guests in that respect. I don't manage or message guests anymore. On if I did on any occasion, it would be to say hello. Hello, I see you in there. Even because I say that because at this point, I'm very far removed from the guest communication component. So sometimes it's fun to jump back down and say, hey guys, nice to see you. And go back, go back to, where I need to be on this level. And it's really funny too, because, for example, Airbnb it is still my account, right? So my face is attached to that. So sometimes I'll jump in and say, oh, I've been talking a lot to guess, but I really hasn't been me at all. It's been my virtual assistants using my own account with my face attached to it and communicating with guests. So the work still happens, even though I'm not the one doing it, and that's an important thing to implement into your business.
Mhm. What I would add to that is having backup for the different positions in your business. Let's say you have an outsourced cleaning company. Someone might be sick, might be a smaller company, hire a bigger company. If you don't have access there, hire two cleaners that share shifts. If one
Yep.
should be sick, the other could jump in. So this is like just a really small scale. But if you're starting out, that's what's important. And what I would, so now I lost my thought. Ah, yeah, exactly what you said about jumping back in. So this is also why we're doing that, because we meet so many interesting people from all over the world, and we are passionate travelers. That's why we got into this business in the first place. So how I started out really accessible, I just subletted one room of my place in Airbnb.
Mm.
And it's been amazing experiences of the people that came in there. And you didn't lose your privacy. Still, the people know we're guests here. It's kind of a hotel. We have our own space, but still you get in touch with those individuals, and everyone can decide how much they want to get in touch. Like
Yeah.
how the vibe is between you and the guest. So I can really relate to this experience and that you want to touch the roots of your business again. And it's the same what you said about the art aspect. I assume you're still painting and some of your pictures still make it to the properties as well sometimes.
Sometimes, although it's a little bit less time painting, just because I'm always thinking about what else I could do in the business, or what's the next thing I need to work on? How do I scale into this market, or what's the next property that we want to take on. That does
Mhm.
consume a lot of my thoughts. And I say it with a smile because it's fun, right? But yeah, I do paint every now and then. And also, it's funny that you mentioned that story about how you started because it's completely the opposite of how I started. I never hosted a home that I was in with another traveler, but I just closed on a larger property here in California. And for the first time in my hosting career, I will host a room in a house that I live in. So again, it's all about like new challenges, new frontiers, and I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun just to be on this side of the hosting spectrum, and I'm interested to see what it's going to be like.
And about romanticizing, the picture that was drawn in my mind over our conversation is you, in a way, you just changed the canvas. And you cannot say like every entrepreneur is an artist in a way, but being an artist is about creation, and every entrepreneur creates in a way. But especially in your place, that you never left the art place, and obviously being an entrepreneur and rarely paintings of yourself make it into the properties because it wouldn't be feasible. You're too busy, but still, you give your artists you're partnering with that room. And because of you, this art gets created in the first place. So with that, you still evolved in the art process. You're still a creative element to that.
And that is the part that gives me joy every day. I think without that component, I would not be in the place that I'm at today with the business because that feeds me every day. And so that is a big motivator. Yeah.
And the most interesting point of this interview and where I am at with my journey on Airbnb and the direction you want to go more towards too is capital and owning property. This is essentially the best for the long term, the least headache.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now it's about how to get capital. So this really depends in which country you're living. If you can get credit, which is really good in the States, which is more difficult in Germany, for example. I'm
Mm.
not saying there are not no possibilities, but it's harder to access. And of course, there are like other sources, but this is more on the private funding side. So you have the banks and you have private individuals, companies, etc.
Yeah.
So here it makes really sense to have a public image. This is what you said before, and I saw that you highlighted in some outlets. You have the connection to the art community where there is a lot of capital. And even though the place has nothing, or like even though this space has nothing to do with what you're doing essentially, it was unconsciously maybe a clever decision to link those for the long run. So I would like to know a little bit more about what your experience has been until now, and maybe also what your plan for the future holds.
Yeah. So yeah, on the capital side, you're totally right. When I first joined this idea of artwork with real estate, it was only to feed my passion, right? It was only to build a life that this could be sustainable, right? I can make money, but also do what I want to do. It wasn't really under the guise of acquiring more properties to own. That just kind of happened as a byproduct of joining those two concepts. So yeah, you're right. Here on stateside, we do have access to a lot of public funding, especially for the arts. If you incorporate the arts component in your business, I was able to position us to be fundable by public grants, right? So because we are in the art space, we're providing a platform that helps artists, right, maintain their lifestyle. We're eligible for public funding. Also, because we're just in the real estate and Airbnb space for investors who are looking to maximize revenue or get returns on their investments, right? We're in a space that is conducive for that, especially if, after you've proven your track record, right? You understand a market, you've been able to take a home, make a certain amount of revenue, and be able to demonstrate that to another person who's looking to have their money work for them. then it's kind of a no-brainer, right? If you're talking to the right person who has the right amount of capital that you need, and you identify a property based off your research and available data that will generate the same of what you've already done, that conversation is easier to have to be able to secure that property and to reintroduce yourself to the under the umbrella of the ownership. So there's different levers and things that you can pull and push to be able to make sure that if your goal is to acquire more properties or ownership, that you can do that if you understand your market and you understand who's in your network. I would say, for us to continue to be a business that has longevity, ownership is definitely a big part of that in terms of real estate. I foresee that we will need to acquire more real estate and own it. Arbitrage is a really great sort of way to get your foot in the door and understand the processes and systems involved with hosting, right? And be able to return an investment. But if that property owner sells the property, your business goes away, right? If that property owner decides that, oh, I'm going to rent to someone else, your business is gone. If you have a co-hosting deal, and that property owner decides, hey, you know what, we're going to go to long-term renters, or hey, we're going to move back into the property, then that part of your business goes away. So ownership is really something that every person in the space needs to be focused on if their goal is longevity for their business. And that's true with whatever market that you're in. So I would say to someone who is starting out, have that at least somewhere in your goal plan to be able to eventually own real estate. And like I said, arbitrage and co-hosting is a great way to start to get that revenue going, to understand what's involved in making sure that you have that revenue every month. And then that makes you more attractive for purchasing deals in the future.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the time we live on right now. So if you look at the geopolitic situation, where I don't want to get into detail now, but alone if you look at the flow and the time axis of how money, how credits, and how capital goes. It's a typical cycle. And right now we're in a cycle where it's most important for individuals to get as much ownership as possible to be secured. So many things are happening. Future is really uncertain. And I got more into that idea also because of my brother. And he's I would say, old-fashioned real estate investor.
Mm-hmm.
So the way he works is really conventional. He's 15 years older, so he's in his mid-40s. And he started out working in IT, made good money, got investments from the banks, and by now owns round about 100 properties, apartments, and he paid off almost all of them and sublets them long term. So it's really contradictory to what we are doing. I would say the modern way of doing things, but we're constantly on the hustle, we're constantly on the run. We have to deal with the headache. We have to be dynamic, and it's also a different time. So this strategy is well approved, and it got me thinking a lot because of my experiences with arbitrage, which have been really profitable. Sometimes I was earning 10 times more than the rent I was paying. But then still, even if you offer the landlord good conditions, you're dependent. You're simply dependent, what you said. And it can end like this. Even though if you have contracts, everything, it doesn't help, you know? And now I would like to know about your typical investor avatar. With avatar, I mean you paint a picture of which qualities the person has that is investing into your business. So people can get an idea what to look out for in an investor for the real estate space. And we can diversify that a little bit because you obviously have people coming from the art space. You're based in the States, and I'll give my input from being kind of the exact opposite.
Okay, so my investor avatar, you mean someone who is looking to invest in the business for a return, or do you mean someone that I'm looking for to purchase a property from?
I'm looking for the one that gives you the capital.
Oh, it gives me capital. So, well, I think for any investor that I'm looking to potentially partner with, first of all, I have to trust them, right? They have to be trustworthy and they have to come with realistic expectations. So anyone who comes and they want, they give me $100,000 and they want a 14% return. Well, I'd have to do a lot of work up front to be able to set the expectations of that person to be more realistic so that it's a relationship that starts off the right way, right? I don't over promise anything. I lean heavy on data, right? So someone who understands the data, understands the wheelhouse of operations of our business, right? That's also important because I don't know, in well, really, it doesn't matter what market you're in. There is a certain degree of seasonality, right? So there's highs and lows with this business, and they have to understand the nuances associated with that and be okay with that, right? So there has to be a certain level of understanding of what I do, what we do, before I would partner or invest in a relationship with an investor.
And how do you get the foot in the door? You spoke about the network aspect,
Yeah,
so that it might be people that you already know. And there's also the cold approach, but this might be even higher capital. So which way are you going with
yeah.
knowing the
So
answer already?
yeah. So look, at the end of the day, if there's someone that you have engaged with or that's in your network who doesn't understand what you do, then you're doing yourself a disservice, right? So what I mean by that is there might be a person who has a lot of capital who is looking to partner with someone like you who doesn't know that you exist. And so that is a lost opportunity. So I feel like I really lean on people that are kind of in my network and I try to communicate often about what I do. Either that is through messaging on platforms, right? Staying active and engaged, answering people's questions, creating a lot of content on social media, right? Having that content push out to your network so people understand who you are and kind of align with maybe they might align with what you're doing or your mission or your goals and objectives. Having just basic marketing materials, right? Like a website, things that communicate what you, your team does and your mission and goals and whatnot. So someone who kind of better understands my business, I think that's an advantage as having them as an investor. In order to have someone like that, you have to be advocating for yourself and communicating to the people, building your network and tapping in often. So that's kind of where the legwork comes in building those relationships. I'm a person that believes that I will continue to operate in that manner. I will have to continue to operate in that manner to be sustainable, right? And I believe that's where the bulk of my future relationships and in terms of partnerships and investments will come from. That just organic, the knowledge share about what we're doing, what I'm doing, what my business is doing, and making those connections from there.
I love the concept of the story. It proves really well for us in terms of relatability. So just throw in one experiences of an investor you got that doesn't come from the art space and doesn't come from conventional founding. So no bank or no credit.
Yeah, so like I mentioned at the top of the call, we just opened up a boutique hotel and it's in a place called Amador here in California. Basically, it's like wine country. I actually had never heard of it before meeting this person that I connected with. I never even knew the place existed. Even though I'm a California kid through and through, I didn't know that this place called Amador existed. But anyway, I got a call one day from this guy and he was like, "Hey, I came across your website And then that led me to your Instagram. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about, I saw this property up in Amador. It's a boutique hotel. He's like really selling. He's like, it's got this beautiful landscape and it's got like 5 units there. It's right in the middle of wine country. It's hillside. There's a bunch of other little boutique shops and everything there. So long story short, that conversation developed into other conversations where we decided ultimately that it was a deal we wanted to partner on because it made sense for us growth wise. It was a space that we had never been in, but it was a space that I know personally that myself and the business wanted to enter. That's the boutique hotel space. And this was a great opportunity to do it because it is essentially in my backyard, right? Hello, California. And this is a person who understood our business, right, from his research and from our conversations. And it's something that he wanted to also invest in himself and was willing to partner with someone who had the knowledge that we have, right? So we had a lot of things that he didn't have in terms of how do you run, how do you run a short-term rental? What's involved? Like, what is the first steps? How do you furnish a boutique hotel or a place that people want to stay in? So a lot of those relationships come from one person having really good knowledge in one particular area or space, and the other person having different kinds of resources, and then you're marrying those two to be able to have a more successful and lucrative relationship. So that's kind of how that relationship spawned for that one. He had some capital, and we had a little bit of capital, but we also had a lot more knowledge than him. And he wanted to. I felt like this was a great relationship for us to start, and we did.
Yeah, explain how you
Yeah,
two bonded.
yeah. I mean, that's
I love it.
and then look, an investor at the end of the day, even if it's just capital, that is as a partnership, right? It is someone who has stake in what you're doing, and you have stake in what they're doing. So it is a partner share. It's a relationship.
And I would like to come towards the end of our conversation that you tell a little bit about your newest venture, which has nothing to do with what we talked about.
Yeah. Which one is that? Because honestly, Philip, I have a couple, but I don't think I've told you about all of them. But I think you might be. I think you might be talking about the bodybuilding.
This would be the last thing I would want to talk about, but I'm talking about your other businesses, like whatever you want to pitch here.
Oh, my other business. Oh man, gosh. Well, is this so? This might be the electric vehicle space, electric charging space I'm mentioning. So this is a completely different sector that I've been involved in before. I've never been involved in before, excuse me. And I had a buddy of mine, again, person in my network from my past, who reached out and he has this amazing idea for just solving the problem with the current ecosystem of electric charging or the current infrastructure of electric charging. He wants to make it, or we essentially want to make it more of an experience, right? A positive experience for people. One that is not necessarily a waste of time, but more so a better use of their time. So we are going to just reimagine what the electric charging station looks like or experience is. And I'm really excited about it. It is, like I said, a different space that I've not been in before. I partner with, again, partnership. I partner with 4 people. We are leading this charge, pun intended. And I think it's exciting. I am a person who I just love challenges. And sometimes they come in different forms. And I tell people, even when I'm doing bodybuilding, that's completely different. It is a different challenge. And I love how I feel when I am encountering a new challenge. I'm getting nervous, a little anxious about it, but I'm also really excited. And fueling excitement, it feels good. And I know on the other side of it, once I've accomplished this thing, I'm not necessarily going to be a different person, but I'm going to be a better person because I've learned something new, whether it's a skill or I've met new people, right? I've built new relationships. I've expanded my network. It's so many positive things on being on the other side of a challenge that I just welcome them all. So this new space is completely different. I am again back on my laptop, sitting on the couch on YouTube, learning as much as I can and relentlessly pursuing data and information. trying to solve problems, right? Because that's what we do as business owners. We solve problems, whether they're in the short-term rental space or they're in the electric vehicle charging space. We just solve problems. So I'm excited about solving this new problem. And I can't say too much about it now because we are still in the building stages, but it is going to be super fun. It's going to be really fun. I'm already having fun doing it, and I can't wait until we hit go, turn the green light on.
Perfect, perfect. So to end this, what we connected over was definitely bodybuilding. And a big challenge, another challenge you took on was doing a bodybuilding competition. And to shred down to a low body composition, to a low percentage of body fat, that's no easy walk in the park, especially with needing to perform like you usually do. So I made a lot of experiences like this with working as a professional model as well, being fit for the shootings. But tell me a little bit more about you, because I think for you it has been the first of such an intense experiences. And you also made this experience together with your, I believe, your sister and your brother.
Yeah, it was a whole family affair. So, and it was something that I never thought about doing, honestly. My sister had done it before, prior to, us doing it with her. And she approached me and my brother and was like, hey, like we could do a competition together. And this is me as like a flabby, I'm not fat, but I was like skinny fat, right? Like I had a little bit of muscle, but a lot of soft pudge, right? So I'm like, there's no way I can get my body to look like a bodybuilder's body, right? I'm like, I just couldn't connect. But what I realized is I was like, oh, this is a challenge. Like this is gonna be something that I've never done. I had struggled with my weight for years, right? I never had a body that I was happy with. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And me and my sister, we recruited my other brother, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. It'd be like a family affair thing. So I'm telling you, Philip, it was one of those things that, gosh, it takes me back to my sister and trying to learn how to drive that car. You really just have to like trust the process, and you get all the information that you can, right? But you have to take action and you have to trust the process. In the beginning, I really didn't think I could do it because it was really hard. But I just kept thinking, man, on the other side of this, I'm gonna be on a freaking stage with a body that I've never had before in my entire life, and I'm gonna feel so good. And so I thought about that every time I went to the gym, every time I did my meal prep and made food, I was getting closer to that goal, right? I was getting closer to that stage. It was one of the hardest things I ever did, but I did it. And I felt so freaking good on that stage, man. There's no, there's nothing you can tell me about being afraid of taking a challenge now. It's like I will do anything as long as it's positive. I'm not hurting anybody or myself. I will do it because on the other side, I'm gonna feel so good. I felt really good, and I can't wait to the next one. We're gonna do another one January next year.
So I think that sums it up really well. And you're a person that's all about taking on challenges. And that's how our interview started. That's what we both talked about. That's what we said we love about being an entrepreneur. And that's where we end. And hopefully there are going to be many more difficult challenges to come and supporting each other along the way. Love
Exactly.
to Love the conversation, brother.
Yeah, you too. And I love partnering with you. Thanks for being my partner. Thanks for being in my network. And yeah, I love your positivity, and just this is a really good platform. So I'm happy that you invited me to come, and I look forward to partnering with you again on other stuff in the future, man.